Most people you talk to when transitioning out of the military have never actually transitioned out themselves. You're probably getting a bunch of opinions from people who plan on staying in until retirement and have no idea how to actually show empathy for your situation. This podcast is about providing fresh perspectives and a front row seat for conversations with successful veterans doing big things after leaving the military. Absolutely. I'm getting more and more excited as well. I think it's the confirmation bias thing. Now that we're thinking about it and looking for great people to bring on here, it's like you start seeing them all over the place. And so yeah, I think it'll result in a lot of great connections we never would have even considered otherwise. And I made a post just because of this podcast. I was thinking about, like, when we were getting out, what transition resources there were. Like, there's so many organizations, and we talked about this previously, but I made a LinkedIn post where I consolidated all those organizations. There's tons more. I mean, it's a massive list, but I consolidated a lot of the main ones and just posted it and got crazy good response from people. And I even heard back from several installations saying, we're implementing this into our, like, transitioning curriculum now.
Nice.
Just because I randomly pulled together some organizations that are like, hopefully, it'll, will have an effect on soldiers transitioning out of whatever service for years to come. So I think this will have all sorts of impacts that we may or may not be able to anticipate.
Yeah, we have somewhat of a similar transition story, not exactly the same, of course, but I think we represent a small percentage of the people transitioning out. So the more diverse backgrounds that we're going to have from the guests that are actually coming on, it's going to just offer that much more of a round picture of what is possible and what's out there. Not to say that we can't wrap our heads around anybody's situation and try to help out and give guidance, but hearing it straight from somebody who maybe hated being in the military, or, the different reasons for getting out. I think you and I, we weren't leaving the military because we hated it or we didn't enjoy our time. It was just time to move on. But not everybody's in that same boat. So
that's right. Yeah. I love getting all sorts of different variety of perspectives and reasons why people left, and their path afterwards, because I think that each of those will resonate with different people in a really personal way. Well, let's roll it. So I've got the pleasure of speaking with Jack while he's in the guest seat. For those that don't know him, Jack Williams is the complete package. He can develop a detailed Army concept of operations from scratch overnight while in a tent in the middle of the Baltics. He can walk several marathons over uneven terrain wearing full Army combat equipment, even with a broken hip. He's an asset to any basketball team on the court, even though he's a lefty. And best of all, he's an outstanding and intentional father and husband. And I witnessed firsthand each of these things, since I had the pleasure of serving as his executive officer, and we've remained close friends to this day. So Jack is an absolute master of systems. He's a problem solver who always asks very insightful questions, and he's one of the most patient leaders I've met, frankly. He's a rare type of human that is equally comfortable covered in mud and sleep deprived as he is wearing a suit. You don't find many of those. So with that, Jack, it's a pleasure to put you in the guest seat for one of these episodes and learn a bit more about your background and share that with others. So I wanted to jump right in. Could you start by talking a little bit about your background, your military story, and kind of how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I feel like people might think with listening to these first couple episodes that we're dating or something, but I I think we both just think very highly of each other. I think for me, the military background, I guess I started at West Point. I had no desire to go to college outside of West Point. Had I not gone, I would have enlisted in the Marine Corps most likely. I've got a short story about that. I think the Marine Corps recruiter when I was in high school told me that ROTC was Reserve Officer Training Corps, and if you wanted to, if you wanted to join any corps, it should be my corps. And he told me that if I wanted to be active duty, I had to go enlisted, and I kind of Googled or whatever, active duty officer, and that got me on the path to West Point. So I didn't apply to any other colleges. Went to West Point, thankfully, by the skin of my teeth. I think when I showed up at West Point, I didn't even know if I was actually accepted, because I was pending while I was in transition to West Point. And then I saw the admissions guy and he like shook my hand and said, "You're good to go." So by the skin of my teeth, got into West Point, but was very grateful of that opportunity and tried to take advantage of it while I was there. Graduated with a systems engineering background, and then went as an armor officer right out of the gate. The goal with armor officers, not somewhat similar to yours. You kind of mentioned that you would have gone infantry if you had thought of the Ranger Regiment as the goal. But for me, it was I wanted to command in the 173rd. I wanted to be an airborne unit commander. And I had a mentor that said, "Hey, if you want to do your captain time airborne, you better start out on tanks because the armor community is all about turret time." So I chose Fort Riley right off the bat. And then I did platoon leader time and XO time on tanks in the same company, thankfully. I got 3 years on tanks as a tank commander in the same company, and I absolutely love that. Finished up there, went to MCCC, Ranger School, all the armor schools required to go airborne, and PCS to the 173rd in Europe, in Germany, with you and all the guys there. I think that was one of my three goals in the military that I wanted to accomplish was command in that unit. The other being Ranger School, and then the third, which I didn't accomplish, I was on my way to, was grad school. But I think the commanding in the 173rd was that mark on what I wanted to do. So after that, as you mentioned in the last episode, I was super into real estate. Real estate was like my passion. It was my hobby. It was everything I did when I had time off. And we chose Hawaii as our next duty station to pursue our real estate goals and our dream to get into real estate and figure that out. I worked with the Hawaii National Guard while I was here, and then in order to stay in Hawaii, I dropped a functional area packet to be an ORSA, which is really it's data analytics or using AI and Excel and trying to use math to predict problems and help solve problems for higher level organizations. So I did that for 2 years. Got a lot of really good background experience with the data analytics piece right when AI was coming out and right when all these things were transitioning. So I felt very uniquely lucky to be in that position during that time. And then the writing was on the wall. I was at the 12-year mark. I had just pinned major, and I said, "Hey, like the Army is not going to keep me in Hawaii for 8 more years until 20." Family became a growing priority. It was always the number one priority, but with 3 kids now, it became even more so impactful when I was gone or when I wasn't able to help out. So we made the decision to transition out of the Army and just continue full steam ahead with real estate. And we can talk a little bit about that transition, but that's pretty much what the whole episode is going to be about. So I'm sure the focus will be, many of the questions will be about that transition. So we can talk about that.
Yeah. Well, just to backtrack a little bit, why West Point / the military from the beginning? What was it? I know you've got some family background, but what was it that had you so driven and laser focused on that destination?
Yeah, I had one grandpa retired from the Army, one grandpa retired from the Navy, and then my dad was a Marine. So I had a lot of, influence in the men in my family to serve my country in some way. And then friend group around in high school, a number of my friends joined the military. It was just something that we did, kind of sports translated to military service. And I consider myself quite lucky just because, I think enlisting and going that route would have been an awesome option. And I think I would have found out what would have piqued my interest as an enlisted Marine. But at the same time, West Point really did fill my cup. I really enjoyed my time there. Some people hate it, but I thought the camaraderie that was built there, the education I got there, I thought was phenomenal. And my dad, back in the day, he never pushed me to do anything. There was no pressure to do sports or no pressure to do anything. But he did say, like, you have to go to college. And that was the impetus for me trying to figure out how to do college and the military. and it worked out.
Speaking of education, and you mentioned grad school, what was it about? Was it just circumstance that you ended up not going that route while in the military? Could you speak to folks that may be considering grad school while in the military, or once they transition out, kind of based off of, I know neither of us have been at this point, but based off of what you learned or what you considered along the way?
Yeah, so that's one thing that I love about the military. I think if you are committed to 20 years, you should absolutely pursue a grad school option and have the Army cover it. Whether or not you're doing night school, I mean, that's a lot to put on your plate. But if you can do a full-time option, there are so many programs out there, whether it be, where they're selective, where you actually have to apply. Of course, ACS, there's always an application process, but some positions are nominative with follow-on assignments. If you can get grad school paid for by the military, you absolutely should. And in my situation as a data analytics guy, grad school would have been a requirement. So I kind of did a unique deal with my branch and said, hey, let me postpone grad school in order to stay in Hawaii. In an attempt, I was possibly going to do it during night school to try to not leave Hawaii. Had I not had real estate in Hawaii, I would have tried to go to like an elite data analytics school. My goal was to go to MIT and get a data analytics degree from there. Um, Now, having said that, again, with wanting to stay in Hawaii, that was the hurdle that I couldn't get past. So grad school
Right.
just wasn't an option because I would have had to actually choose to be away from the family for 2 years. And like I can do deployments all day, but to choose to be gone for 2 years without the guarantee to even come back to Hawaii, that would have been a really tough choice.
Yeah. Yeah. You hit that fork in the road where you could only delay the inevitable for so long before you had to make the choice between, you know, continuing to not uproot all the roots you had guys had planted in Hawaii, or
Right.
continue the route the Army kind of required. Um,
Yep.
I want to get into specifically how you transitioned. Can you talk a little bit more about what you did to start off in preparation for leaving the Army?
Yeah, so as soon as we got to Hawaii, we bought a house, and then I was doing the math literally in the hotel waiting to close on the house. And I'm an Excel nerd, so I have all this, this forecasting model on
Let,
my
let me
computer.
let me pause you there for a second. You say you're an Excel nerd. I remember a conversation that we had in Germany where we talked about everyone needs three things: something to make them money, something to keep them fit, and then something to keep them creative, or flow their creative juices. And you responded to that question by saying you do Excel to keep you creative. And I was just blown away.
Yeah,
I
I
still
mean,
don't forget
so
that conversation because you're the only person. I mean, I'm sure there's other weirdos like you out there, but you said Excel is your creative outlet, and I just want you to to bask in that for a second.
and it hasn't changed. It is absolutely a hobby of mine. I mean, I can't imagine how many forecasting models I've created in Excel for real estate or for just different real estate problems. And yeah, I think it is creation. It's not a set problem that you're just trying to figure out. There's 100 different ways to do it. But yeah, I do enjoy Excel.
So I
Um,
cut you off there. So sorry, continue with you got into real estate in Hawaii, and so continue with how you kind of prepared for your transition.
Yeah, so I mean, I did the math and I was like, wait, we're gonna pay, a decent amount of real estate fees when we try to sell this thing. And at the time, we thought we were gonna be on the island for 18 months. So, long term, you can make damn good money in Hawaii real estate, but in 18 months to try to turn a profit, you have to do everything you can to make sure that you're buying right and renovating and then trying to sell for the profit, right? And I looked at Courtney and I said, hey, like you should get your real estate license. At the very least, you just sell the house in 18 months, and we'll be golden. And she did that. She got her license within, I think, a month of being on island, and absolutely crushed it. I can absolutely say that her work over the last 4 years has absolutely set us up for a phenomenal trajectory. And we've kind of built, that was the sprout that kind of built everything else that we've built on. So with her success immediately, so not to glaze over, but she got her real estate license and immediately started seeing success in sales. And then those sales partly is connected to obviously getting a mortgage. So what I did in order to assist with the transition is I got my license to be a mortgage broker. And where I draw value from that is you're actually saving people real money. If you can give them a better rate, and if you can actually close on time and make sure that they're being protected within the contract, you're doing a lot of things for people. And not only that, but like the rate aside, it's our goal to really educate people on real estate transactions. So if they're buying their first home in Hawaii, they might buy 10 homes throughout their military career moving forward. And it's going to start from the education that Courtney and I provide. So we really are a two-person team in this, and we try to provide as much education about buying, not just put people through the pipeline and get them a good deal. We turn people onto like, hey, buy and possibly keep and rent out, and then buy at the next duty station and build a real estate portfolio while you're active duty military. But I was able to start that while still in the military. So we got that rolling. We also realized that a lot of our clients previously that bought with us were going to start keeping their homes. So we had the idea to start a property management company a couple years ago, and we've grown that considerably. So upon transitioning, we kind of had a clear vision of what my role was going to be, and really it was the same role that I've been doing, just without a 50-hour a week job on top of that.
Slight
That
difference.
obviously, takes priority, whether you want it to or not. The military always is the priority. When you're wearing the uniform, you have to prioritize that. So
But I just want to highlight something there. Jack and I both have a problem, and it's called doing things on nights and weekends. So while you were active duty, you got your you became a loan officer. And can you talk about that process? Is that something you'd recommend to others that are considering, um, for lack of a better, maybe, I mean, it could be considered a side hustle in some senses while you're active, but it sounds like that's it's a great certification. It's something you can do in a fairly short amount of time and set you up for a very seamless transition moving into the civilian world, right? How would you talk to others about that sort of path?
yeah, I agree. I think if you're getting into real estate, you at least have to compare the loan officer pipeline to the real estate agent pipeline, because although it's much more heavily reliant on systems. The amount of time that you're spending with clients is far less, and the ability to do it while maintaining active duty employment is also, it's much easier to do that as a loan officer than it is as a real estate agent, because
For sure.
real estate agent, you're showing houses, you're going to the inspections, you're doing a lot of in-person requirements. Whereas loan officer, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that needs to get done that I can do at midnight when my kids are asleep. That a real estate agent, most of Courtney's work is during the day. Even if it's not with the clients, it's interacting with the title company, interacting with vendors, and it's like very much so during the day. So the process specifically, it's just a 20-hour course. You do 20-hour online course, and that opens up the ability for you to take the exam for federal and state,
Is it
and you
like
just
a
get licensed in one state.
is it like an army course where you can just skip through really fast to turn 20 hours into two? I'm the master at that.
So unfortunately, no. The 20 hours is the minimum, and they time it.
Mm.
So it will take you 20 hours, but you could work it to where you're kind of getting it done right at the 20 hour mark. But the biggest issue, I suppose, is that the training teaches you more about compliance and like how to be a compliant loan officer versus how to be a good loan officer.
Yep.
So that would be the only barrier to entry. Is my recommendation would be to find somebody who's in the industry already, who can give you guidance, mentor you, and who doesn't require you to be in an office. So you can maybe be a loan officer assistant to start. Now it takes years to become really fluent and really know your stuff, but it also you're constantly learning, but within 5 loans, you're pretty much there, and the learning curve is steep, but you can, as long as you have a mindset where you're going to figure out the problem no matter what. And like 3 foot walls exist for everybody, even outside, the military is full of them, but every loan has a different 3 foot wall. And it doesn't really matter how experienced you are, as long as you're willing to put the work in to get past that 3 foot wall immediately. Because if you delay on that 3 foot wall, then you're really putting your client at risk, and not following through for your client and not performing for your client. But the reality of it is there's different 3 foot walls. Even if you've got 20 years of experience, something new is going to come up. And you just have to deal with that.
While not everyone is a systems engineer like you, and you are particularly gifted at systems, I truly mean that from what I said in the opening. I think that a lot of Army guys are designed to put the systems together to be able to do something like being a loan officer, whether it's that or something else. But the ability to do it after hours, of all the real estate deals that I've done, my wife and I have done, I've only met one of the loan officers, and that was because he was one of my best friends from the Army. So you can do it with no face-to-face interaction. I mean, it seems like a very for those that it's the right fit, it seems like a pretty solid way to transition. It's very, very seamless. You can literally hit the ground running right as you get out, or well before you get out, like you did. So it's a very interesting path to consider. Um,
Yeah.
were there any specific skills from your time in the Army that you feel have translated to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, what I've realized is if you're going out on your own, and I'll speak to that just because obviously that's where we're at right now. We're trying to be completely reliant on our own skills and the entrepreneurship type of thing. When you boil it down, it's all connected to sales. And sales is important, but really sales just becomes being a people person and understanding what people need and then filling that need. I think so. The skills that I learned from the military that apply directly to what I'm doing now is just, being able to cohesively explain something to somebody and then have that person go and run with it and take it. And that's what I'm talking about with our employees. Um, Giving enough leash and not micromanaging. That's I think hugely enabling to our employees, and our employees have taken that and run with it. Like the I mean, we preach autonomy and we want them to make decisions. And I think that's one of my main focuses, or like one of, at least I tried to do that in the military, was create good decision making within the subordinate structure of the Army. And I think that has led to being able to enable the employees as much as possible. Um, but the people skills, just talking, just like understanding, what people's problems are, and then being able to solve those problems. I think that's probably the biggest thing. You mentioned systems. I think that's a given, right? I don't like to, if I can create autonomy within my own tasks, then I can accomplish more. I think that's something I learned just throughout the military because they throw so much at you. And I don't think there's a single person in the Army that can't understand and implement some systems. I think it goes back to what we talked about last time. It's just you just have to choose to do it. If you choose to focus on creating systems, then you'll start to codify and create things. And that's really the codification of systems. So the in the military, you have SOPs, you have things like, hey, when this happens, we follow this steps, the procedures. That has to happen in a business when you transition, because you don't want delays between when something happens and when the reaction happens. That sort of decision making applies directly to anything you're going to do. I think any employer is going to want that, no matter what you're doing. If you can shorten the time between what you're providing and what the problem was, you're going to be better than 90% of people around you, whether you're an employee or a business owner, or it's just in life. Like if you can shorten that flash to bang, even if it's a mistake, right? I think Elon Musk says that, like, like the whole point is to do things to go through processes as quickly as possible. So that way, even if it's a mistake, you just, okay, we start over, figure it out and change and quickly go over. And you might be able to do something in 6 months that it would take another company 3 years to do, just because we're improving how quickly the process turns over.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Move
I think
fast and
all of
break
that
things.
applies.
The Facebook motto.
Right. And that, yeah, another great example, right? And that's kind of how there's a lot of negative connotations with like building the plane in flight, right? Um, but I do think that if you have the commitment to actually build the plane, then it's fine to do that, right? It's the people that take the steps and then are lazy and don't follow through and that end up not doing so well. But if you commit to building the plane, then go ahead and take off, right? Like that's
Right. And I've always loved the phrase a 60% solution today is better than a 100% solution too late.
yes.
Sometimes you just have to act on the information you currently have and adjust course along the way. And I think that the military does specifically train folks, and especially combat arms folks, to make a decision in a timely manner and then be able to adjust fire from there once that decision has been made. I want to go back to you mentioned the flash to bang between a problem is presented and then the solution that you use to solve that problem. And you have a great point there. It's kind of a three tiered response, right? It's like, first of all, are you the person that can solve a problem? Because if you're a problem solver, that puts you in the top 10%, maybe top 5% of people out there in any workforce. The second is if you can solve that problem with minimal or no guidance, so you're kind of a fire and forget person, then all of a sudden you're solving problems without significant input from superiors or from bosses, and that just makes their day infinitely better. And then the third, even higher tier than that, is you're solving the problem with little guidance along the way, and also the quickest, a very quick solution. All of a sudden, that's the golden trifecta right there. So I love how you talked about uh, solving the problem and shortening that time horizon between presentation of the problem and then the solution that you find.
Yeah, and what we use to communicate that with our employees is the 1-3-1. I don't know if you've heard that, but
Mhm.
it's defining the problem, right? You if you can just define it, that's going to help solve it. And then at least three possible solutions, and then the one is the recommendation,
I
right?
love
And
it.
if um the reality of it is it's hard to teach decision making, but it's easy to teach correct decision making. So if you make a decision, if you just, hey, let me make the decision and try to solve the problem, if it's not perfect, that is probably going to be better than inaction. Because I can change your thought process. We can say, okay, here's how you analyzed it, and then you made this decision and it didn't work out. Let's just change how you analyzed it. But it's really hard to get somebody to action if they're not an action taker.
That's right. Do you have a well, I get, and just to hit on that 1-3-1 rule, I think that also just what it does is it buys you trust. It shows
Yes.
that you're thoughtful, you have some sort of preparation before you bring this potential solution to whoever you're reporting to. And that just continues to snowball as you build more and more trust and become more of a problem solver who requires little oversight along the way. Do you have a specific example or story from the Army of a skill that's highlighted that then has translated to what you're doing now or carried on? Because and the reason I ask is because I think a lot of people struggle with translating what they've done in the military to a job interview or to their resume or to conversations with people in the civilian world as they're moving into employment or to whatever is next. And so I think it's helpful to hear other examples of people that can take a very specific military story and convert that into maybe an interview response or a value add proposition to someone in the civilian sector.
It may be unique to me, but my career was sort of defined by steep learning curves, right? I started out as a tank on tanks, then I was airborne, then I was with the Hawaii National Guard, which I had never done anything with National Guard. then I was data analytics. So I did in 12 years, I did 4 different, very different jobs. And my goal was to always just immediately become at least like an 80% expert on what I was doing right away. Like just like sprint towards understanding what needed to happen. And then the eventual expertise I can work through, but you need to have a decent understanding of the problem set in order to be a leader and a decision maker in an organization. And I think for me, that just kind of sowed the seeds for the entrepreneurial mindset. I mean, we are consistently thinking of new ideas and thinking of new realms to join and get into. And I feel that we have the confidence to be able to do that because time and time again, I did brand new jobs in the military and was able to figure that out and perform. Um, so it's something that I am comfortable doing and just joining a team that I have nothing, no experience in and background in and feel that we can provide value. But I think we follow through with that and we back that up with the willingness to learn right away. Like I didn't come into the 173rd and think like, well, this is how we did it on tanks and this is how we, need to do it here. It was a steep learning curve right off the bat. I tried to learn that as quickly as possible.
That's great. I want to. So you mentioned sales. I don't think many people think of honing their sales skills while in the military, but you're exactly right. There's so many things that you have to sell to your subordinates, and what an
Yeah.
easy thing you can use to pitch potential employers or coworkers or even employees in the future outside of the military, given the sales experience that people naturally accumulate. Like think of the number of times you receive some sort of guidance from higher that something has to be done, whether it's like an additional duty or something that nobody likes, and you have to sell your platoon or your company on doing those things. I mean, that's probably a daily occurrence. And so sales is 100% developed
And
while
we
in the
got
military.
we got a lot of that in the 173rd.
Yes, we did.
I think we probably got like repackaging messaging was something that we became very well versed in while in the 173rd
The only
because
the
we
only
understood that like the higher level like the picture like that okay this is what we're trying to accomplish here but it wasn't always described to us in a way that was palatable by our subordinates.
the 173rd is one of the few, maybe the only brigade that has to act like a division and has the same
Yep.
level of responsibility and taskings and like geographic dispersion even more so. So yeah, we absolutely felt the brunt of that. So as a result, we honed our sales skills on a regular basis to, you know, not only coerce guys into doing what we had to do, but truly do so in a way that inspired others and kept the team together.
Right.
Um, the other thing you hit on is accelerating the learning curve. The first uh, regimental commander of the 75th, when I came in, his guidance to everyone was, how fast can you accelerate the learning curve? Just like any organization, the 75th has its own acronyms, its own language, its own culture, and you're only a contributing member, a true value add to the organization when you can get up that learning curve. And the faster you can get up it and accelerate that trajectory on the curve, the better, and the quicker you can start contributing and being a valued piece to the team. So, are there any specific tools or ways you've approached accelerating the learning curve over the years?
I'm a consumer of all products, anything that I can get my hands on, I try to consume. And I think that is not everybody's cup of tea. But I'm not a fast reader by any means, but I'm willing to read any sort of materials that I can get my hands on that will hopefully give me a leg up in a situation down the line. Most organizations you decide to join are going to have some sort of SOPs, some sort of rubrics, some sort of guidance, and it's not always directly applicable. Admittedly, most units in the Army don't even follow their own SOPs, but at least you can kind of understand what the what the goal is. here's what we think perfect would look like, and it's on paper for a reason. People write down what they actually think. There's a lot of when you say things, that's one thing, but when you write it down, that's more thought process, more editing, and I think consuming that is a way to start really quickly. And just ask the questions. I was put on a question profile in basic training because I asked too many questions.
You
But
still
what
have a
I
copy?
yeah, right. No, my squad leader was just an asshole. Um, but having said that, like that has been definitive. It's been a definitive uh like characteristic of my career. I know that I ask too many questions, and I know that it can be annoying, but I don't ask the same question twice. I learn very quickly, and the question to me is that acceleration of the learning curve. Let me just ask the question about the thing that I'm trying to think 3 steps down. Some people are like, why are you even asking that question? It's like, well, because I don't want to mess up when I get to that point. Um, and the question asking has been good and bad. I've had leaders that have praised me for it, and I've also had leaders that have despised it. So,
Well, I've noticed personally that when you ask questions, it's to get at the foundations of things. It's not like, let
right.
me understand the just what's right in front of me, and this could be part of what bothers people too, because they may not understand the foundation, they may not understand the true basics of what is driving something, but that's what you're trying to get at.
Yes.
You're trying to understand the deeper why that
Yep.
others are just kind of intellectually too lazy to comprehend or to pursue, but you go after it. And I think that's why they're important questions to ask and why it might frustrate other people.
Right. I think, and I don't mean to negatively say anything about anybody, but it's if they don't understand the foundation and I ask a question about the foundation, oftentimes it may be taken as insubordination.
Trying to
And
expose them.
questioning the leader as opposed to questioning the why and understanding. I think that's the key is questioning to understand, not just questioning to question. Um, and that's something that has gotten me in trouble in the past is I'll ask a question because I want to understand because it goes back to, hey, I need to communicate this to the next guy. And maybe he's not going to receive the message the same way that I did. So I'm going to question to make sure that I understand.
Well, as we kind of start winding down a little bit, I did want to, for the sake of folks listening, can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing now? And on top of the loan officer work, you mentioned the property management company that you guys started. Can you talk a little bit more about what your day to day looks like now, so that those that might be interested or want to reach out to get perspective would have a little bit of insight?
Yeah, for sure. So, what we're doing now is we're in the beginning stages, or I say beginning stages, probably mid stages of opening our real estate brokerage here in Hawaii. So that'll be we're completely standalone. We're not relying on any of the big companies like Remax or anything like that to start. Courtney's starting her brokerage from scratch. And I'm the loan officer side. The property management company takes a big portion of our time. We have 70 properties under management here in Hawaii, and that is the closest thing to an actual business, with employees and operations and things. And we're absolutely loving that. That has been our experiment type of, we're constantly trying new things and figuring out what's going to work and what's not going to work for systems and growth. We have 4 employees now within property management that help us execute that. And we're really just doing what we can to provide a full real estate package. So anything you can think of within property management, our plans are to bring that in-house and be able to provide solutions for our property owners in-house. So everything from cleaning services, maintenance, HVAC, staging, anything you can think of that is associated with a real estate transaction, we're planning to bring in-house, and we've already kind of laid the groundwork to do that.
That's great. Really a full service, people that want to buy a house, sell a house, finance that house, and then manage that house as a rental long term. You guys can do it all. Um, Jack, what's the question we want to ask everyone? The one ask and one give. What's one thing that you're looking for, or one way that others could provide value to you?
I think the one ask that I have is, we are trying to grow our property management business. And by doing that, we're really interested in acquiring more property management companies. So if anybody has experience out there with the acquisition of real estate companies, not necessarily real estate itself, but brokerages, purchasing property management companies, if anybody has any experience in that, I would love to have a conversation with you because we are ready to pull the trigger now and scale now. And I think the best way that we're going to do that is by actually finding property management companies that might need a little help, a little assistance, or maybe property managers that are on their way out, and figuring out a solution that's going to work for them, the owners, and us, and move forward with some sort of acquisition to grow our rental portfolio within our property management company.
And specifically on island, right
Yeah,
now.
I think, we've got big goals, maybe 5 to 10 years down the line, but on island, property management is absolutely the first step of where we're trying to go. Yeah.
Got it. And then what's one way you can provide value to others?
Yeah, of course. I think my go-to give is just my ability to educate people on VA loans. I am very willing to have a conversation without any assumption of getting your business. I'm passionate about teaching about VA loans or real estate in general. So we talked about how real estate is absolutely my passion with the with the Excel forecasting models and stuff. Even if anything you can think of, if it's a real estate problem set, I will help you war game it, and it'll probably be scratch my itch and fill my cup just by helping out, war game a problem that you have. So whether it's education about VA loan or an investment property that you have that you're thinking about whether to sell or keep it, or what have you, I'd absolutely be willing to have a conversation about any real estate problem that you have.
Fantastic. Well, I believe if my memory serves, your enterprise email was John T. Williams 390, correct?
That is correct.
So
Yes.
you guys just heard of at least 390 John T. Williams throughout the military. You heard from the top one, the best one here today.
The best
So
one.
if you know
Yeah.
any other John T. Williamses out there, send them our way. They can. I'm sure they have a lot to learn from this John T. Williams, and he goes by Jack, so even better.
Yes.
But Jack, any final thoughts or advice for those that are currently transitioning or considering an upcoming transition from the military?
Yeah, I think the final there's one other thing is, my transition, because I did a lot ahead of time to transition, it was met by not a lot of support. And I think that that's rare, and I hope that it's rare. My advice to you is, no matter what, keep putting effort into your military career and make sure that if you're wearing the uniform, you are for sure meeting those expectations. But also, the moment you get out, no one's going to contact you. No one is there for your family. And it's unfortunate. I don't mean to be like a huge naysayer, but you're going to have friendships that you created, but like your bosses who are there for the transition, they're gone. The Army support structure, gone. There is no one worrying about your family once you take that uniform off. So during the transition, meet the requirements and do what you have to do, especially for those to your left and right, like, help the team, help the people. But the Army, the Marine, the military will continue to roll. Um, these systems and these processes to help support people to get out are there for a reason. And the military is not going to crumble just because you take some time away from work to be able to focus on your transition, because no one else is going to help you transition. Um, and that sounds like such a negative, so I don't want to end on a negative, but it's just to say, like, if someone gives you a hard time for focusing on your transition and focusing on the next step, really ask yourself if you care about what their opinion is, if that's what they're gonna say. It's like, does this PowerPoint need to be created, or do you need to focus on being able to provide for your family moving forward? And if that leader doesn't understand how one should outweigh the other, then maybe just tweak down how much you care about what that leader thinks of you.
Yeah.
Now, I did have plenty of leaders that were very supportive, and even on the way out, I was very happy with helping people to my left and right. But there were leaders in impactful decision-making positions that did not support my transition. So do what you can to support yourself, and realize that when you take the uniform off, it's your family that matters, and you are the one supporting your family. The military is no longer supporting the family.
That's right. And for those that can, and we didn't even get into this, but for those that can, do whatever you're able to get a skill bridge or some sort of
Yes.
CSP program as you get out, because that can really allow you to take that healthy disconnect period from the military and invest in what's next. And I know that you didn't get that opportunity, unfortunately, but for those that are able to capitalize on that, that is such a crucial period of time. And we talked about this a little bit before. There are so many organizations out there that I didn't even know. I just learned about a vast majority of them recently, but there's so many organizations that are doing great work. Go ahead.
I do have some. So thank you for reminding me, because I don't know if I'll have an opportunity to kind of bring this up, but I during this episode I did, and it's just a tidbit. And I hope somebody, if you've listened to the end of the podcast, if you made it through, you'll at least take this away. I had a client that reached out or told me about this, and it's, everybody knows the VA loan. Well, people should, but like we said, the percentage of people using it isn't that crazy. Everybody knows the GI Bill, right? But there's a lot of states that match the GI Bill. And when I say match, I'm talking about for children, for dependents. So the very specific example is Wisconsin. If I transfer my GI Bill to one of my kids, they can use that 4 years full tuition for whatever school. Wisconsin, if one of my kids goes to a University of Wisconsin school, because I commissioned out of Wisconsin, they will provide a full GI Bill equivalent for a second kid.
Wow.
Not even the kid that I transferred my GI Bill, but a completely separate, above and beyond 4 years at a University of Wisconsin school. And there's really minimal requirements to be able to make sure that happens. And it's really just enlist or commission out of that state, and I think maintain residency or be a resident. And then obviously they do it for their state schools, right? So it's not like you could go to the University of California and have Wisconsin pay for it. But the way to figure this out is to go to your state specific VA entitlements website. If you just Google, Nebraska VA website, they'll have a website dedicated to that, and it'll list all the benefits that the state provides for people who are even 10% or have different veteran statuses. So take that, figure out what your state provides specifically, and then it could be incredibly lucrative for you and your family.
I did not know that. That's incredible.
Yes.
Well, Jack, this has been awesome. You truly are a inspirational, transformative leader, and I've learned a lot from you. I've learned a lot working with you throughout the years, and thanks for being candid today. And I learned more from you and about you through this episode. So that's all for today. Thank you, Jack.
Awesome. I appreciate that, and I think I can't say enough. I'm excited about this, and I think it comes through when we're talking to the guests, and I know that the listeners are going to see that too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Veteran Ventures podcast. If you heard something interesting or found the show to be helpful, send it to a friend who is transitioning out of the military or considering a transition. We'd also really appreciate if you left a rating and review of the show. That helps us reach more people with these amazing stories of successful veterans. We'll catch you next time on the Veteran Ventures podcast. And until then, go do the thing. Make that decision, have that conversation, and go find your next mission.